1948. A war on terror ravages Malaya. High Commissioner Sir Edward Gent has been killed in an air crash. No replacement has yet been made. The security forces are in disarray. On the front line, it is the powerful British planters and mine owners who now seize the initiative. Instead of being cowed by the communist attacks, they are spoiling for a fight.
Their theory was, we kill some of the planters and all will be frightened. The planters will rush off back to UK, so the economy of Malaya will drop. But it was just the reverse. When they started attacking, mostly the British planters and the locals got together and rearmed themselves.
As the communist insurgency worsens, the planters demand reinforcements. The government in London turns to police units that have recently been withdrawn from Palestine. One of the first to arrive is Sergeant Gus Fletcher, and he hits the ground running.
They wanted 500 ex-Palestine police quickly to go. So I wrote to the Colonial Office, and in very short time, I was whipped up to London, given a very quick interview, and off I go with the first plane load to Malaya. We were on the plane for 2.5 days. Finally, and thankfully, Singapore slid under our wings and we landed. And then onto the train to Kuala Lumpur. We were in action. As we arrived, we rushed out to an estate being shot up and burnt. And we picked up a dead body. We came back. Hours later, it was now 3 a.m. Before we can even get to bed, another one. We go off to a different direction, another estate.
For Gus Fletcher, it's a shocking baptism of fire, and it seems as if the communists are running rings round the government forces. But as reinforcements arrive, the planters begin recruiting a special constabulary to protect their mines and plantations, and it's an immediate success. At least 30,000 volunteers, mainly Malays, sign up. It's down to new arrivals like Gus Fletcher to ready the specials for the fight.
I trained the special constables to use their guns, and we only had one shotgun for every 2 men. And the ammunition, it was pre-war, 1938, 1936 even. And of course, when you fired, you would get a click, it'd be a dud.
Whatever the state of their ammunition, the special constables must hold the fort at plantations and mines so that the Malayan police units and army regiments can take the fight back to the communists. But even before they confront Chin Peng's fighters, they must face the Malayan jungle, the communists' closest ally.
When I first entered the jungle, I was utterly amazed. I was awestruck. Twilight and noisy of insects, monkeys and everything making a noise, thousands of mosquitoes and leeches.
The only things I disliked so much in the jungle were the leeches, and the leeches were terrible.
They are all over the place, on the ground, on the leaves. You go underneath and they drop onto your neck and crawl down, and you don't feel it at all until they puncture your skin.
I've literally had 20, 30 to 40 covering my body, mainly around my ankles and in my private parts as well. We won't go into that, though.
You go into a frenzy.
The communist fighters, known as CTs, know well that their opponents will be at a chronic disadvantage.
Mana dalam hutan dunia kita bukan? Dia masuk itu, dia macam kata orang itu, busa masuk dalam kampung. Ada tak? Dia tak tahu puluh kiri, dia kan? Dia gantung kepada itu kompas. Nak hala ke mana? Bukit mana? Sungai mana? Itulah hal lain dia tak kerti dah.
You've got to try to navigate through this, which is no landmark for you to see because you're enclosed by the jungle. And all the time you were sweating, falling over, ripping your uniform, and you come to big wide rivers. Sometimes they're not on the map. The maps are inaccurate. And consequently, you end up lost.
For young British National Service recruits, this first exposure to jungle warfare is often traumatizing.
In the jungle company, life was very harsh. And I was leading a platoon, national service people who were shanghaied from the schools at 18 years old. They really suffered because they were not trained in the tropics. And suddenly they're thrown into the jungle. And at night you can hear the boys crying.
But the war on terror is not only fought in the jungles, for there is another communist army that stalks Malayan villages and towns. This secret army makes a vital contribution to the terrorist war machine. Chin Peng's fighters need supplies, food and information, and it all has to come from outside the jungle. So they depend on a network of hidden supporters known as the Masses Organization, or Min Yun. In everyday life, a member of the Min Yun could be a teacher or waiter, a government worker, or office clerk. But for their communist masters, they must act as couriers, spies, and saboteurs.
The Min Yun is very important. They are the silent group who were the eyes, ears of the communists. They give information of any of the government rules, police raids and so on. They were the very powerful army, people's army.
They have another task too. Every month, Chin Peng must pay every one of his soldiers. So the Min Yun supporters must extort as much cash as they can from villagers and estate workers. If anyone is unwilling or unable to pay these subscriptions, the communists call in the hard men from the jungle.
Chin Peng assumed that just because they didn't want to support the communists, they were immediately traitors.
哪里去赶着去惹他？凶巴巴的，什么你要顺的，不听的都不可以。
佢上門問你攞女，你唔俾點樣？佢咪捉你去殺頭啦！
KL Chai remembers his friend, a schoolteacher, who refused to cooperate and suffered a gruesome punishment.
They called him out of the classroom, broad daylight, and they murdered him right in front of all those who came to see that. They disemboweled him. Oh dear. That was another sad episode of the communists.
The insurgency has become a war of terror.
It's a terrorism is a form of political communication. The real intended recipient of the act of terror is not the victim. The victim is secondary. It's unfortunate victim, but it's secondary. The real audience is all of us watching. Because the terrorist, regardless of his ideological stripe, whether it's today's kind of new religiously motivated terrorists or the communist terrorists of the past, the aim is always to send a powerful message, a message of fear, of intimidation, that if you do not cooperate with us, this is what will happen to you.
As this campaign of terror escalates, the British look for a way to tackle the Min Yun. But there's a big problem. They are secretive, faceless. So a new plan is hatched to create a national register of Malayans. Now, every man, woman, and child over 12 must possess an identity card with a photograph and thumbprint. Anyone without an identity card, an IC, is instantly suspect.
National registration policy was actually very good psychological warfare because it really made the communists worried. They wanted to remain incognito. They didn't want to be identified. But if you didn't go out and get identified, then people immediately start suspecting you. So it was a really smart move.
Teams of civil servants and photographers spread out across Malaya, armed with cameras and fingerprint pads. It soon proves to be a hazardous job.
It was quite a dangerous job because all photographers who take pictures of these civilians and so on, many were taken away by the communists in the dead of the night. They were tortured and then left dead.
For the communists, registration poses a threat to their secretive war, so they fight back. Their aim, to sabotage the registration campaign.
他出登记卡呢，他就妨碍很大。没有登记卡，我们自由啊。他不懂得哪一个马共，他出了登记卡呢，没有的他就可以抓你。将那时候马共呢，他就实行没收，到处乡村去把他登记卡没收掉。
A favorite communist tactic is to target the buses.
They used to stop the buses, collect all the ICs and burn them, you see. And then they see those who are suspected government helpers, they'll get them out of the bus and take them into the jungle and murder them.
In September 1948, as the violence escalates, the British government finally appoint a new High Commissioner, another veteran of Palestine, Sir Henry Gurney. As he takes up his post at King's House in Kuala Lumpur, Gurney faces a seemingly unwinnable war against a ruthless and determined foe. The Malayan people are demoralized and afraid. It's high time for a radical new approach to crush Chin Peng's campaign of terror.